Success transcends cities. As one of the world's most respected business leaders, I know what it takes. Join me now as I sit down with fellow leaders and we share our insights into how you can be successful. My name is Jeffrey Hayzlett, and this is All Business. Well, today we have a truly exceptional guest joining us. He's not just a speaker, he's a survivor, a leader, and a beacon of resilience. My guest is Dave Sanderson, president of Dave Sanderson Speaks International. Now, many of you might remember Dave as the last passenger off U.S. Airways Flight 1549, better known as the Miracle on the Hudson. His story is one of survival, of turning adversity into triumph, and leadership that inspires. So get ready for a conversation that goes beyond the surface, one that delves into the heart of resilience, leadership, and the indomitable human spirit. Dave, welcome to All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett. Hey, Dave, first of all, congratulations on the 15th anniversary of the Miracle on Hudson, because your story of survival during the Miracle on the Hudson is nothing short of remarkable. Now, my first question to you is, how did that experience reshape your outlook on life? And what were the key takeaways that continue to fuel your journey today?
Well, thank you very much, Jeffrey. That event was an amazing event, and thank you so much for C-Suite and you participating. Yeah, I mean, when people ask me that, the biggest takeaway I had is I realized that I was probably pretty judgmental. And I realized as I went through this that, if I could just check that at the door, say, be less judgmental, how could that change my life? And that one thing, Jeffrey, really opened up so many more doors for me when I said, you know what? And until I understand somebody's backstory and understand where they came from, let's just take them for face value. And that opened up so many doors for me. And that's probably the biggest lesson. But there were many takeaways from this. Number one, how people need to lead when they're asked to lead, that defining moment. Because as you know, I think some other people may know, when I went out the right side of the plane, there was no crew. The crew went out the left side of the plane. So the right side of the plane had to be managed by passengers who had zero training, zero experience. But what you learn in leadership, as you know, and a lot of people know, is this. It's not about the situation. It's about leading people and how you influence people and how you can bring people's patterns to build rapport quickly to get an outcome. I think that was probably one of the biggest takeaways from that experience.
It's amazing because you say the right side of the plane, left side. The right side was the Jersey side. The left side was the New York side. Most people don't know that Hudson separates New York and New York City from Jersey. So it's kind of an interesting, split of the kind of people that were on each side of that. So you've become a symbol of leadership, Dave, without question. You've been a good friend of mine for a number of years that I've been able to know you. Well, now over, I think, about 10, 15 years. For certain. What's the secret sauce to leading, not just in good times, but in those moments when everything's hitting the fan? How do you keep soaring when the turbulence hits?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question, Jeffrey. I've been honored to have this relationship with you for that long. First is you have to be able to manage your mind or manage your state. That's number one thing, because if you lose your mind, everybody else around you may lose their minds likewise. So I think number one is, how do you manage your state? And there's three ways to do that: through your physiology, what your internal dialogue is, and what you focus on. But I think the real thing, and when that defining moment comes, leaders need to be able to do two things. First, they got to be extremely resourceful. It's not about the resources you don't have; it's about what resources, how you use the ones you do have. And that day, we didn't have many resources. So we had to be very resourceful. But second, and I think this is the key tenet, and you see this from the crew that day to the passengers and even the first responders, is you got to be able to make a decision and follow through immediately. You don't have time to mess around and think, okay, what do I do now? What do I do now? You got to make a decision and act on it, and hopefully it's going to be the right decision at least 51% of the time. But I think those are the two key tenets: resourcefulness and the ability to make a decision.
Well, you had a few moments, not much. I mean, you guys took off, immediately had the bird strike, and then all of a sudden, I think the captain, all he did was come on said, brace for impact, right? And then the crew started yelling, heads down, stay down, heads down, stay down. I remember that, and I remember even I went back and read the transcripts of the inquiry, which was interesting. So what was going through your head when that came on and said, what were you doing? I mean, you had to make those decisions.
Yeah, and that's, for the first probably minute and a half to 2 minutes, no one knew what was really going on until he said his famous words, "This is your captain, brace for impact." And that's the moment where I needed to get my act together. And, because, I had to manage my state. Because now
Yeah.
you're looking out the window and all I saw was Manhattan and a bridge coming up. And when he said that, as we were crossing over the George Washington, is when he said those words. And when I looked out the window, you could see people's faces. So you knew you were really close to the bridge. So first thing I had to do is get my state managed. So I had to do that through the way I focused that day. I had to start talking to myself and focusing on what I had to do. And one of the things I learned in business, and which I've used in athletics, and as you know, when I went back to swim with the SEALs and special operations, is you have to have a game plan. And I knew if I had a game plan, if I survived, at least I had a game plan. And my game plan was I'll help out. So the first thing I did is after I got my mind said, okay, focus, focus, focus. I had to have a game plan, and I just kept saying in my head, I'll up out, I'll up out, I'll up out. So if I survive, now I know what I'm going to do. So I had certainty. Because one of the things about leadership is this: the person with the most certainty in the most uncertain moment becomes a leader. It doesn't matter if you're the janitor or you're the CEO. If you give certainty to people, they look to you for leadership. And that's pretty much what I thought I had to do, and hopefully I executed that day.
Dave, I know you as a business executive, right? But now, of course, now you're an author, great bestseller, Moments Matter, a new book, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you didn't have a lot of this training that I would see. I mean, I hear you using the words, the plan, this, and this. Some of that stuff's in business, but a lot of this is about personal leadership. Where did you gain those skills?
Well, thank you for that, because my second book, From Turmoil to Triumph, really talks about how I got those skill sets, and that really came to me when I was blessed to find my first mentor in 1984. His name was Bill, and he taught me over the 13-year period the mindset of success. And it was an amazing experience. And one of the things Jeffrey he did for me, which a lot of people don't know, and I'm talking about a little bit more, is he had what he called his kitchen cabinet, and these were the CEOs of like Duke Energy or Duke Power back then, and back then it was Nations Bank, which is now Bank of America. The people he ran with, and occasionally when they had their power lunches, he would invite me in just to sit there, and I would listen to what these gentlemen were talking about. So I got the mindset early of my understanding is, how did these leaders back in the 80s and early 90s, what they were thinking and how they went about conducting their business, which helped me learn some of these skill sets. So when my time had to come, at least I had a basis for how a leader thinks and how people execute at the highest levels of economic and financial industries.
It's amazing. Mentors played a big role in a lot of leaders' lives and continue in everyone's lives. And we can learn a lot from other people. But I want to talk about resilience, Dave, because it's clear that's a term that's thrown around a lot. Okay. But brother, you have lived it. How do you redefine resilience, and what's your message to those that might be facing their own miracle on the Hudson moment in life or in business?
Well, thank you for asking that question, Jeffrey, because the most often asked question I still get almost 15 years later is, how do you get back on a plane after going through a plane crash? And what now I've interpreted that as is people are asking, how do you bounce back and get that resiliency out of a traumatic experience? How did you do it? Yeah. And there was a lot of things that I did, but I think it really comes down to that mindset. And one of the things I tell people is, especially I found out of COVID. This is really when my mind started thinking about COVID and everything happened, because as you know, we hit COVID and all of a sudden we had social justice questions, we had police questions, we had an election, and things were stacking on people. And what I kept hearing over and over with the business people and other people I talked to is they were blaming things. Yeah. I said, if you keep blaming things, you can never give yourself the opportunity to grow. So I think the first thing you got to do to build resiliency is stop blaming things. Take personal responsibility for everything. And that way you own it. You own your own emotions. You own the way you respond. And I think that was one of the fastest ways that I built my resiliency to be able to handle things. Now I feel when something happens, it's great. I have a problem. It gives me the opportunity to grow. Just reframing how I did that.
Well, it's amazing because you talk about how did people get back on an airplane, but some people went onto the wing, were rescued by the ferry, taken back over to the New York or the Jersey side, and then jumped in a cab, and then went to the airport and went home that day. within hours of the crash. That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's one of the things. That's why, as you know, that's why the authorities talked to another gentleman and me, because everybody started going to other places.
Yeah.
That is, I was really amazed that some of those people got back very quickly and said, I got to get out of here. Yeah, I think it's amazing. I don't judge anybody, because you had to do what you had to do in that moment in time, right? But some of us, had maybe a different perspective on how to handle things and bounce back. And I think that's one of the reasons my TED Talk went the way it did, how it went viral, because people are thriving to understand, how do you bounce back? How do you get that resiliency? Because that is what people are thriving for now, because of the state of uncertainty, not only in the economic world, but in the world in general.
Yeah. And by the way, survival is one thing. And I love the word thriving, okay, because that's really important in driving, right? So what are some of the tactical triumphs, the strategies, mindset shifts, or whatever it takes that you've used and recommend to others to go from a survival mode to a thriving mode?
Yeah, and I think one of the things I learned, Jeffrey, is that the meaning you attach to things. And that's the first thing that I had to really do. First, after I have to manage my state and constantly in my mind, right? Because that's a full-time job for some of us, and still every day I've got to do that. And the way I do that is actually get up early and work out to get my mind in the right state. But it really comes down to what's the meaning you attach to something that produces the emotions that you have, and the emotion that you have at that moment is your life. So you got to be able to understand how to reframe the meanings that you have. And the people who can reframe meanings are the ones who can bounce back and go forward much quicker. That was really the first thing that I did. The second thing that I did, and one of the things I learned through my time with Tony Robbins, is you got to get it out of your body. And some of the people who were challenged that day, kept going in and kept running it through your mind. What I did was different. What I did is I started speaking that next weekend. I was asked to speak at my church, so I did. And I really realized that the more I got it out of my body, the more anything negative got out of my body. And that helped me grow much quicker. So those two things, meaning and being able to get it out of your body, to change that very quickly, helped me tremendously.
Yeah, get that bad stuff out. Get it out. That's the best way to be able to do it. And you mentioned Tony Robbins. Of course, you were director of security, so I want to let folks know about that. And you've got a new book coming out, The Limitless Life. Now, why did you write this particular book, and how can someone who is going through a challenging time in their life turn it around and into a victory?
Well, thank you for asking. This book really came about a year ago, when I was actually doing a series of little videos, and someone said, "Hey, that's a book." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, that's a book." So what I did is I took those lessons, because The Limitless Life really is a part 3 of my series. Because what I did, Jeffrey, and I love Star Wars. I'm a kid of the 70s, so I love Star Wars. I'm going to admit it. And what Star Wars was brilliant, because they had the story of Luke and Darth Vader. Then they went back to tell how Darth Vader became Darth Vader. Then they went forward. So I set up this whole book series the same way. Moments Matter is about that day, about the skills I had to use. From turmoil to triumph, it's about how did I get there? How did I learn this? And The Limitless Life is about the lessons I learned out of that experience that helped me grow to a place where now I'm with you today, and I'm being able to do things around the world and impact people's lives. So The Limitless Life is really about the 15 lessons for January 15th. I did it intentionally like that, FYI, to be able to give 15 lessons to people I've learned out of the experience, to be able to not only bounce back, and you can take it individually or collectively, but it's these lessons that I learned that now I'm teaching to people that can't, stuff that we all know, but all I've done is be able to condense it to help people compress decades into days to getting an outcome.
Well, as I recall, you said the 15th anniversary of the Miracle on Hudson, on January the 15th, which just passed some time ago. And then weren't you in the 15th row as well?
I was C15A. I was a C15A. And just a little tidbit that I'm going to reveal, I revealed at our event, was that the time the plane went down was 1,500 hours and 27 minutes.
Wow.
327.
So it might not be the new lucky number to bet on is not 7 anymore. It's 15. Okay. It's 15. It's 15. That's great. That's amazing. Yeah, it's just amazing. And by the way, Dave, you are one of the nicest men I've ever met. Person. Let's just say person. Men and women. And you really, truly are. You're gracious and everything. And I always talk about in this fast-paced world that we live in, it's adapt or die. I mean, you have to do that. Change, adapt, or die. So I want to know, because you've grown over the years that I've known you. I've seen you from when you first started, speaking about this and where you're at today. How do you stay relevant? What's your approach to staying ahead of the curve and ensuring that your message remains impactful in changing times?
Well, one of the things I learned a long time ago when this whole thing started is about relevancy. And, I had the opportunity years ago, Jeffrey, to escort a gentleman named General Colin Powell.
Oh, yeah. Great guy. Hey, I got to sit next to him on a plane. That's the closest I got to.
And I got to go with him on an elevator and escort him one day. And I was like, it was an amazing learning experience. And one thing he talked about is the ability for him to stay relevant, right? After he got out of being chairman of Joint Chiefs, he had that point in time. And he said, his mindset goes, how can I keep relevancy? How can I still impact the country? So, that word relevancy has been in my mind. It's like, in the way I've done it, and the way I sort of watch other people do it is I just keep up on what's going current, what's really going out in that world right now. What's the biggest issue the world's got going on by speaking to CEOs, CFOs, entrepreneurs, leaders in athletics, and why that term. And right now, my whole focus is how to help people create opportunity out of uncertainty, because the world is uncertain. So all I do is I stay up. I focus. I read a lot. I listen to a book every week. I do audio books, so that way I can get books done pretty quickly and find out what is going on in the world so I can stay relevant with the message. Because this, as you know, the Miracle on the Hudson, it is a story, not only a story, but it's a business. You look at it from a business perspective, all the lessons you learn about business out of this. I mean, it's an amazing story. And when I break things down for people, it's like, all right, did you think about leadership? Do you think about all these different aspects of business happen on that plane that day?
Yeah, and it's such an inspiring story. I know it's one of the few movies that every time I watch it, in terms of that experience, the Sully piece of it just makes me cry. It's amazing to see that many people survived. Only a few accidents, only a few people were injured, but yet everybody walked away alive. And it's just everything came together, which is amazing. So, Dave, we got about a minute left, and if you couldn't distill your experiences into a few words of wisdoms for our audience, what would they be? What's the core message you want people to take away from your story and certainly from your work?
Well, thank you. I think number one is everybody in this world is going to have what I call a personal plane crash experience. Something's going to happen. And I don't care if you're the Queen of England or you're the person at the lowest levels, something's going to happen. So you got to have the mindset that you got to be prepared. So what I talk about is those who have the humility to prepare have the confidence to execute in that moment. So you got to humble yourself. You've always got to keep learning. You always got to keep on improving your mind. And I do that through personal development in other ways. But I think, once again, if you settle down, I think the people like the captain, the crew, and some of the pastors had that preparation, had the humility to prepare to make sure that day everybody was able to execute. And that's what this whole event was about when we hit New York, is those first responders did it over and over. They prepared and they executed to turn a potential tragedy into a miracle.
Well, it's amazing. Right time, right place. And we learned all about it, that moments matter. And certainly those moments matter, and you can lead a limitless life. So there we go. Talking with Dave Sanderson. Make sure that you go out and get this new book. It's going to be better than the first one. By far, it'll certainly be a great, great roadmap for you to lead a better life. So, Dave, thanks for joining us right here in All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett on C-Suite Radio and C-Suite TV.
Thank you very much.
Hey, at the end of every show, I like to talk about what I learned. And today it was about action. In that moment, moments matter. And Dave knew what to do. He thought it through. He had a game plan. So acting in a game plan. And by the way, if you have a game plan and you don't act, well, you could very well die. And that's what we learned right here on All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett. All about resilience and all about taking that action, putting your plan into place, and making it happen. That's what's going to make you a winner and a survivor. Right here on All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett on C-Suite Radio and C-Suite TV.
Welcome to Bestseller TV. I'm Taryn Winterbrill. We're here with Randy Gage. He is the author of Radical Rebirth, Kill Off the Old You and Create a New Life. Randy, it's great to have you with us.
Hey, great to be on with you.
Well, radical title. It grabs you because rebirth, killing off your old life. It was like, wow. I was thinking to myself, are a lot of people looking to, reinvent themselves? So I'm excited to to get into the impetus of the book, but we should say congratulations. 14th. This is your 14th book. Did I read that right?
Yeah, it just seems amazing to me.
To me too. Anyway, that is quite the accomplishment. I'm always curious, prolific authors like yourself, how do you decide to write a book about a specific topic? Why was this so important for you to add another one to your library?
Yeah, in my case, I never struggle with, what could my next book be about? My challenge is I have like 27 books I want to write, and I have to figure what's the next one. But in this case, I feel like Radical Rebirth is the culmination of all my work for the last 20, even 30 years, kind of coming together. Because I work a lot in the field of personal development, personal growth, right? And the principles of prosperity. And so much of that is the mind game. So much of that is the limiting beliefs you have. It's the level of your self-esteem. It's whether you believe you're worthy. And so that's kind of the topics that we really chapter and verse explore in the book.
I guess when I read the title and got into the book, I guess you felt that there were enough people that would be attracted to seeing a title like this. There were enough people that are looking for help in this capacity, that are looking to do this.
Yeah, there's two markets. Let me tell you a story that never made the book, but was the cause of the book. It was, like 20 years ago, Christmas Eve. I was in a Marriott hotel writing my suicide journal. Not like a note for the world. It was my personal journal explaining to myself why killing myself was the best thing, and just kind of processing that. And I was really blessed. I got professional help. There was a therapist I was working with. I got him on the phone. He talked me down. I didn't do it, right? But there are what it kind of took me writing this book to discover was that in a situation like that, you don't have to kill yourself. You can kill off the parts of you that you don't like. And so there's a big group of people, I think, that fall into that category, and they would devour the book. And then there's another group of people that I think where I got to later in life. I like to joke. My friends say, well, Randy's on his 4th midlife crisis. I hope he's figured this one out.
I was going to ask you about that, but go on.
Yeah. So, and I always joke, no, I hope I have another 5 midlife crisis, that I'm around long enough to do that.
Okay, right.
Because now the radical rebirths that I'm doing today, these days, aren't because I have to kill off this horrible part of myself that I don't like, but because I'm moving toward the me that I want to become. And that's kind of the underlying premise of the whole book is that how you can work toward every day, just get a little bit closer to that highest possible version of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So this came from a personal perspective. It wasn't as if you said, there's so many people who need to hear this. You're like, there have to be others like me, and you want to share your story.
Yeah. And my gift/curse is I'm this rational, logical, analytical guy. So I don't just say, well, I feel like I turned my life around. I say, wow, I really turned my life around. Exactly how did I do that? What is the process of that? How, what's the science behind that? And so that's what, I think every author writes the book initially for themselves because it helps you crystallize your thoughts. And that's what I was doing with this book, is crystallizing the thought of how do you kill off that old version of yourself and create a rebirth for yourself.
Right. So that said, is the reader someone who's looking for a professional rebirth, a personal rebirth, both? Who is your target audience?
Yeah, I don't think you can separate them. You can, it's like I was doing an interview on a show the other day, and they were talking about rich people who were unhappy. I was like, well, they're not prosperous, right? You want to be rich and you want to be healthy and you want to have healthy relationships and you want to have a strong spiritual grounding. So that's, if you want to truly become, move toward that highest possible version of yourself, that it's got to be that way. It's got to be a holistic thing. You can't say, well, okay, I'm ignoring my spouse and my kids couldn't pick me out of a police lineup, but man, I just got promoted to CEO and I've got $5 million worth of stock options and the company's about to go public. Ain't nobody going to care about that at your funeral.
Right. I mean, exactly. Just because one thing is going great doesn't mean everything is going great. So, I mean, and that's what the book talks about. So, I mean, kind of without giving everything away, but, in your book, are you proposing a plan? I mean, if someone's sitting here saying, I'm kind of in that zone that Randy just mentioned, is this a step-by-step process? How would you put it, this process of radical rebirth? How would you put it into your own words, Randy?
Yeah, I definitely prosecute the case in the book. Right?
Prosecute the process?
Yeah. So I say, okay, here's what we know. You have a vision of your life. You either have high self-esteem or you have low self-esteem. If you have low self-esteem, you have a very poor vision of your life. If you have high self-esteem, you have a very a positive vision. Your vision is created by your core foundational beliefs, your beliefs about. And in the book, I divide it into 6 main categories: God and religion, marriage and relationships, health and wellness, sex and sexuality, career and work. So each of those areas, you've developed core foundational beliefs. And those determine your vision. Your vision then determines your daily habits. And your daily habits are going to determine what kind of life you create or career you create. So we really, in the book, I show you how to reverse engineer the process, to go all the way back and say, okay, let's talk about your beliefs about money and success. And then I prosecute the case. I say, here's the most frequent mind virus programming in the world.
Yeah, you mentioned mind viruses, just not to interrupt, but I thought that was an interesting take on it. What's a mind virus?
Yeah, because you get viruses in your subconscious mind, just like you could get a virus on your laptop.
Yeah.
So if we say, okay, what are the most prevalent mind viruses about money today? They would be: money is bad, rich people are evil, it's spiritual to be poor, to be successful in the corporate world, you got to be a bad parent. To have a successful company, you got to rape and pillage and plunder the environment and take advantage of people and lie to the media and lie to your shareholders and outsource everything for slave labor. Those are the prevalent beliefs. So if you are infected with those mind viruses in your subconscious mind, and then your conscious mind, you say, hey, I'm sick of being poor. I want to be wealthy. I want to be successful. I want to make money. Anybody watching right now knows if your subconscious mind and your conscious mind are having a fight, a conflict, the subconscious mind is always going to win. So when I say I prosecute the case, I go to, it doesn't matter what generation you are. I say, okay, let's look at the TV shows, the books, the blockbuster movies, the plays, the operas, the rap songs, everything in culture, and how are wealthy people portrayed, how are rich companies portrayed. And in the book, I mean, I have a list of movies and TV people their mind is blown when they see, and they realize, wow, I really have been programmed my whole life and I never knew it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the chapters is titled "Why You Love to Hate Rich People," and P.S. The chapters that they grab you. The first chapter is recognizing when your life sucks. And I thought to myself, how do you know this? How do you know if your life sucks? So you go into it. You have a chapter called "Hope, Dope, and a Very Dead Pope." Right? It makes you. I went straight to that chapter. What's he talking about here? I do want to go back to something you were just saying, sort of, these mind viruses. What about people who say, Randy, this nature versus nurture idea, right? I mean, how can you, I don't know, if it's genetic, right? If it's nature, how can you stop these thoughts and experience a rebirth with how you are genetically programmed?
Yeah, I love that question, because I actually was I'm working on a blog on that topic today, because there's two schools of philosophy for people, right? Which is hey, everything is predetermined. There is a supernatural entity, and that is my destiny. If that's your core foundational belief, I probably can't help you. My book probably can't help you. But if you believe, okay, I'm a co-creator in my life. One of the things I say in the book is there are random circumstances, right? You could have been born with a genetic disability. That's random. You didn't have any choice in that, right? A meteorite could land on your garage and smash your brand new BMW. That's a random act. You have no control over that. But what I will maintain is there are random occurrences, but there are no random lives.
Random occurrences, but no random lives. Okay.
Yeah. And so why was I in that hotel room thinking about blowing my brains out?
Yeah.
Because I had just ended my 11th negative dysfunctional relationship in a row, right? And had, it's the name changed, the face changed, but it was like it was the same person kept coming back and getting plastic surgery. And so I say, well, God, I've had 11 negative relationships in a row. I have all these health challenges. I have these business failures. Is there one person who was always at the scene of the crime? And that's what I mean when I say there's no random lives. Okay, everybody, maybe you didn't cause that accident. Somebody just ran a red light and they plowed into the side of your Toyota. Okay, but if somebody's driving into your Toyota once a week, then you might ask yourself, what am I doing to put myself in this situation that every week somebody is driving into my car?
How would you answer this question, Randy? How many radical rebirths have you had? Or have you had?
I feel like I've had six or seven at this point. Okay,
so multiple radical rebirths, you encourage it. It's okay. It's not a bad thing. I mean, people might see this as, I don't know, put it like, if I need to keep, having radical rebirths, is that necessarily a good thing?
It's a wonderful thing. And if you're not having radical rebirth, then you're not playing this game called life, right? Like there's millions of people. They're not going to buy my book. There's no reason for them to buy my book. Their philosophy is, keep your head down, stay below the cubicle. It's hump day. Thank God it's Friday. All right, let me get my paycheck. Let me get a 12-pack of Bud Light. Let me binge Netflix all weekend until Monday morning. The alarm goes off and I do the process all over again. There are millions of people who have accepted that is a adequate a substitute for life. Yeah, but I'm saying if you're not working on your next level, on your next radical rebirth, I don't think you're really living. I think you're just existing.
Yeah, because I mean, I was going to ask you. You're one of the first line on the book jacket says you can't have lasting, meaningful happiness unless you're willing to continually reinvent yourself. And I was thinking, well, if you're happy, why would you want to reinvent yourself? But I guess it goes to what you just said.
Yeah, it's like, do you see, to me, life is about enlightenment. I want to be every day. I want to be a little bit closer to that highest possible version of me than I was yesterday.
Yeah. And you mentioned you went through, you would encourage more midlife crises?
I would. I wish everybody would have a midlife crisis.
That's the title of your next book. I wish everybody would have something like that, because that's not something, I mean, that's something people traditionally wish for, right? I mean, that's what I love, is that, this kind of, this word that, like you said, we've been programmed as a midlife crisis. You see it as not a bad thing. This is something that everybody should possibly go through.
Do you know how many people are dentists because their father was a dentist?
Oh, my sister.
Okay, and their great grandfather, or they're in the military because 27 generations of our family have served in the military. Listen, if you really thought it through and you decided you want to be a dentist or you want to be in the military, God bless you, perfect. But if you really wanted to be a dancer or a rapper or compose operas or be a sculptor or run a vinyl record store, well, run a vinyl record store. You know what I mean? Is do the critical thinking, do the self-analysis, develop the self-awareness so that you really live in your life you're writing your story, not the story that your parents or society or someone else wrote for you.
Right. I do want to mention, I mean, like we mentioned, it is your 14th book. Curious, was this because you've written a New York Times bestseller. People may not know Risky is the New Safe, big success. Was this book harder? Was this the most challenging book for you to write because it is so personal and raw and candid and genuine?
Yeah, I'll give you an example. When Risky came out, my friend Bob Berg, who you may know, called and said, "Randy, this is your magnum opus. This is the greatest thing you'll ever write." And I said, God, it better not be, because my next book better be better than this one. And that was Mad Genius. And I felt like Mad Genius took it up to another notch. And I feel the same with this one. And this one's probably even harder for the reason that you just said. Yeah, because it makes you look in the mirror and really question your own premises and, ask those difficult questions, because here's the best way to illustrate it. This funny story in the book. I'm doing this huge event in Panama in a bullfighting arena, which they have converted to a round stage and I'm speaking to 10,000, 11,000 people. My friend Eric Gamio is in the audience with his mother, who's a psychologist. And he's my dear, dear friend for many years. So she tells him, "You never told me Randy's a psychologist." She said, "No." He said, "No, he's not a psychologist." She said, "Yes, he is." She said, "No, Mom, he's not a psychologist." She said, "He has to be, because she's a psychologist. She's married to another psychologist, right?" She says, "The things he's talking about, only a psychologist would know, the way people behave." And so he was relaying that to me afterward, and I have to laugh because I've heard that before. But what they don't understand, I was a teenage addict. I was a teenage alcoholic. I was in jail for armed robbery when I was 15 years old, okay? When you're an addict, you have to become an expert at human manipulation, at lying, at deceit, at knowing what makes people. Okay, I've done crystal meth deals in the worst crack houses of Liberty City and Overtown and National City, right? Stuff like you see on Scarface, where there's the girl on the bed and that underneath the blanket is a shotgun. I mean, I've been in those scenarios. So and I'm a high school dropout, just to be clear. So when people say they think I'm a psychologist, I'm a high school dropout. But when you go into a crack house, you either become an expert at human behavior or you leave in a body bag. It's just the way it is, right? So that's what informed this book and makes it so hard for me to write, is I have to look in those dark spaces and question my premises and see parts of me that I would rather nobody knew about or that I could gloss over. But that isn't where the breakthroughs live. The breakthroughs are when we really are willing to confront ourselves and, call us on our own stuff.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people might wonder, just seeing a title like this, well, what makes this guy qualified, right, to talk about a radical rebirth? But I think you just, hit the nail on the head there. These things that you've gone through, you've really had to, have multiple rebirths. Final question two more questions, but before you were a writer, I mean, with that past that you just mentioned, what is your background? Someone said, Randy, what did you do before you were writing, 14, 15, 16 and books to come?
Started as a dishwasher, spent a lot of time in the restaurant business, working my way up. Finally owned my own restaurant. I learned marketing. I got involved with direct sales. I did well with that. I made many millions of dollars in direct selling, which again, study of human nature, what causes people to do what they do. And so I was training and teaching about marketing. My first book was about marketing. My first seminars were about marketing. And I just came to realize that wasn't the important stuff. The important stuff was the mindset behind all that stuff. Why okay, great. We know you should be motivated. All right. But how do you motivate yourself? What gets you to throw the sheets off the bed in the morning and want to jump out and get into the day? So that's how I kind of evolved, like from marketing as a copywriter and an author. And then you realize how humans respond to stimuli. And then you look at the psychology, and next thing you're looking at worthiness issues and self-esteem, and how does that apply to me, and why do I do the things that I do? And next thing you know, you're writing a book called Radical Rebirth.
I mean, it is quite the journey that you've been on. And if there's anyone who's earned the right to write about this stuff, it's most certainly you. So congratulations on number 14. Have you decided what number 15 is? Are you in the process of writing number 15?
I am torn. It will be something along the lines of the science of prosperity. I want to do like what Ernest Holmes did with the science of mind. I'm thinking about a really in-depth book on the science behind the principles of prosperity, or a science fiction trilogy, kind of like Matrix, Lord of the Rings, that kind of thing. Could go either way.
A fictional trilogy?
It was science. Yeah, be fictional.
Excellent. Well, we can't wait. We can't wait to have you back. It's incredible, what you write about and the journey that you've been on. So much continued success, and we can't wait to see you back soon, Randy. All right. Thanks. Have a great one. If you'd like more information on the book, just check out our website. It's c-suitebookclub.com. That's c-suitebookclub.com. I'm Taryn Winter-Brill. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time right here on Bestseller TV.
Welcome to C-Suite TV Insights. I'm Greg Greenberg. If you're happy, and you know it, you're more likely to be successful both at work and in your relationships. Here to talk about how you too can make the power of positivity pay off is Melissa Garson. She's the author of The Recipe for Real Happiness. Welcome, Melissa.
Hi, Greg. Thanks for having me.
So let's dig into The Recipe for Real Happiness. The first ingredient is love. And it's not just loving other people, you have to love yourself, right?
Absolutely. So think about it, if you're confident and feel good about yourself, then you're willing to take risks. And then, of course, opportunities open up for you. Possibilities are out there. Whereas if you, really withdrawn, you're not going to go there. So loving yourself is the first part. And then you're open to loving others. And we know that community and connection is one of the biggest sources of our well-being.
And the next ingredient is gratitude. And gratitude takes practice, right? You got to work at it.
Absolutely. So really having a practice of gratitude and looking for the good, because you also know that what you look for is what you get, And think about it, on the days that you feel kind of yucky, right? You're looking at what you don't have or what's going wrong. But when you look at what is working and what's going right in your life, you feel better. So it's not like just looking through rose-colored glasses, but it's a practice. And this work in the book is restorative in nature, whereas it does make you feel better, but it's also preventative, so that you build resilience, because when life does what it's going to do, you're then able to call upon these reserves. It's like an emotional bank account that you invest in when you practice gratitude.
Third ingredient is mindfulness. Now, does this mean meditation?
So meditation, that's a great question. Meditation is a pathway to becoming more mindful. So mindfulness is really being present in the moment without judgment or attachment to the outcome. So you're not dwelling in the past or worrying about the future, but you're really here right now. So some people will say, well, I don't really want to be here right now. There are moments that you don't want to be in. But when you practice mindfulness, you realize that nothing stays. Things change all the time. So that if you're in a moment that you really don't want to be in, you could be focused in that moment, and it's not going to last. And we know there's so many distractions around us today that mindfulness is really just inner peace, sense of inner
The
peace.
fourth and final ingredient is learning, keeping an open mind, correct?
Absolutely. So keeping an open mind is very important. And we also know that in those very, very difficult moments in life, that's where the growth is, so that you can stop and say, okay, rather than beating yourself up, as we do, you stop and say, okay, this happened. What can I learn from it? How can I use this going forward in my life, rather than having it take you down that negative spiral?
So finally, put it all together for us. We have our 4 ingredients. How long does it stay in the oven until we're finally happy?
So that's a great question, and the book is really organized in 4 main ingredients, as you mentioned, 10 practices under each. So if you read through the book, outline the ones that call to you, and then just take one, practice it for a week, take another, practice it for a week, and before you know it, you will be feeling amazing.
Well, thanks a lot for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for watching C-Suite TV Insights. I'm Greg Greenberg.